When I did like book tour stuff, I set that up. I had to call bookstores and set it all up, and basically used Facebook to set up events and advertise it and that kind of thing, and email lists. And then, but with New Rivers Press, with my first book, they did set some things up and did publicity, and that was really nice. And then with this book, I love the press that it's published with, Ravenna Press, but they're really small, and so I was pretty much responsible for everything. And honestly, there's probably a lot more I could have done than what I did, but you know, I set up a few readings, and thankfully I get to talk about the book with all of you. And kind of the coolest thing, this is maybe a tangent from your question, but to me that happened with this was that, well, my partner and I did a trip to Ukraine and to the town that Louise Nevelson's from, Pereyaslav Khmelnytsky. Although there's an argument about whether it's now just Pereyaslav or if it's Pereyaslav Khmelnytsky. And they're like, it's like a political figure, I don't know. So some people will tell you one, some the other, so you don't want to offend anybody. But anyway, it's this really cool little town with this awesome outdoor architectural museum. And I was able to meet an artist there and then collaborate with the Nevelson Foundation back in the US, in Philadelphia, where I'm from, and get a plaque put up in honor of Louise Nevelson in Pereyaslav. She'd moved from Pereyaslav to the United States when she was 5, and basically her family was Jewish, and there was a lot of discrimination, pogroms, people getting killed, villages getting emptied out. So they basically fled to the US, and she never went back. And it just seemed like this connection that was really sort of important to her history, and this artist that I met, Yuri, was really into the idea of putting this plaque up. So that was pretty exciting to get to take part. So Louise Nevelson, I became interested in her artwork, in particular her like boxes. Like she does these basically found object. They're like wall sculptures, a lot of them, but they're kind of they're three-dimensional at the same time, and they're like basically a series of crates with like all different sorts of things. Has anyone seen any of her work, or a little bit? Okay. I already mentioned how I love like found objects, right, and writing off of them, and I just thought her work was really cool. And even though I don't know if she ever came to Minnesota. You know, she was basically a total New Yorker. Like she grew up in Maine, like Ukraine till she was 5, then like small town in coastal Maine till she was 18, and then like New York City all the way. Like that was just her place. But which you wouldn't necessarily think, but she has a lot of work. Well, has had, she's no longer living, but you know what I mean. There's a lot of her work in Minnesota, in Minneapolis in particular. Like, when I was working on this project several years ago, and I wanted to see her work in person, because I started off writing about it like out of books, you know, and I wanted to see more of it. I actually could find more in Minneapolis than I could in New York City. That was like visible, right? Because a lot of artists, something I learned too, is that their work is like it's storage somewhere, or it's in somebody's house, or you know, all that stuff. So I guess how I first became interested in her, to actually answer your question, is that when I was living in the Twin Cities, they had a piece of hers out at it might have been like Sky Cloud, out at the Walker and Art Museum, and then there was also one at the Weissman Museum, and I forget the title of it right now, but it was really cool, awesome wall sculpture. And Weissman was free to go to, and it was on campus at the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities. And so I would just like walk over there and hang out with it, you know? And I think that's when I really became interested. And then it wasn't until years later that I embarked on this project, but I think it kind of came back to that, and realizing that I really love to write off of not only found objects, but visual artwork, and her work kind of filled both of those categories. So I just got into it, and it was like a good way too, in terms of thinking of like a schedule or like a writing routine. Like every morning I'll write off of a different sculpture, you know, and I kind of got into that routine. good question. Like, what would I want someone to maybe most of all, just to notice things. I think that's to like maybe be inspired to notice, be inspired to piece things together, whether that's like in your own life or creatively. I think that would be what I would most want people to take away.